All right, everybody. Welcome again to another discussion. Long time since we did one of these things. But today we are talking about Nintendo and how they've, can I say it this early? I guess I will anyway. How they shat the bed this week with their announcement on the Nintendo Direct of the Switch 2. With me, as always, I have Kojo. What's up?
Yo, I'm chilling.
Good, good. And Tommy, what's good?
I'm fresh as fuck. How you, bro?
Been chilling, just like Kojo.
Nice.
All right, all right. So, for the listeners out there, this is our discussion on how Nintendo shat the bed. And basically, we recently had Nintendo do their Switch 2 Direct, where they revealed more information about the Switch 2. What games are coming on, what features are going to be available to the hybrid console, and how they are upgrading from the last Switch, pretty much. And to give a summary of events, it's one of those things of how it started versus how it's going. How it started pretty damn well for people or for audiences where they were fanatic about what they saw, they were excited about what they saw. And then currently how it's going is there's a lot of division amongst the fan base with Nintendo fans and non-Nintendo fans and all around and adjacent, where people are feeling some type of way, basically because of the prices that were revealed. That's the starting point for everything and how Nintendo shat the bed and how we've had all of these discussions about Nintendo greed. And it's an interesting area because I've always complained about how Sony and Xbox are held at different standards, higher standards, in my opinion, to what Nintendo is held at, where Nintendo is allowed to fly by on bullshit just because people are meat writers. But before we get into all of that, I would just like to put the statement out there that I saw the aftermath of all of these stuff. I did not watch the Nintendo Direct. I'm not interested in watching the Nintendo Direct, and perhaps that makes me an unreliable source. And on that topic, then, I would like to switch to Kojo for you to give your verdict and your point of view of the Nintendo Direct, because there are 2 points I specifically want to look at about the showcase or the Switch 2 deep dive. The first area is how a lot of people were saying it was Jeff Keighley puts up his Twitter post of how good was the showcase, and a lot of times Xbox and PlayStation get C's or B's. A lot of overwhelming majority of people say the Nintendo thing was an A level showcase, with the second highest score being given a B. And I'm like, I don't know about that. And I heard other people complaining about, what are you guys glazing the showcase for, or the direct for? We were just being shown games which are already available on other platforms. You all are meat writing stuff which you shouldn't be meat writing. Like, if I give an example, there's the FF7 remake where it's like, bruh, we've had FF7 remake for how many years? We're on to Rebirth now, and you guys are getting excited for a remake. Oh, I can play remake now, and it's probably at a lower quality. And if I use another example to say why I think it's at a lower quality, we had Cyberpunk, which has been revealed, and apparently Cyberpunk will play at 30 frames or 40 frames, where it's like, what the fuck is this? But before I go on a whole spiel, Kojo, can you tell me what was your impression of the thing? What grade would you give it, if you dare to give a grade, because we know you don't like giving things a grade? And do you think the majority of people who were saying it was an A level showcase are justified to say it was an A level showcase, or the people complaining that, bruh, all of these games you guys are glazing, majority of them, 70% of them, we already have them. You can already play them on another platform. So this was not an A level showcase. Maybe it was C.
I think it's a bit of everything. It is true that a lot of the games like like you said, Cyberpunk, Elden Ring, a whole other bunch of stuff. The Harry Potter, no Harry Potter, sorry, Hogwarts Legacy. Have those games have already been out? PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series, PC. You know, so a lot of those games are just re-releases, and it's like Nintendo is playing catch up. But some of the games are not out yet, like Borderlands 4, and that game is not going to come out on, to my knowledge, it's not going to come out on PS4 or Xbox One. So a lot of people are or not a lot of people. Let me not say that. Let me just say, so it is a sign that Nintendo is catching up, or has at least caught up to some degree, because they're now getting games that the current generation is getting. Whereas in on the original Switch, you wouldn't dare run Cyberpunk on that thing, or you wouldn't run Elden Ring, or even a game like Hogwarts Legacy on that thing. And I was sitting with my cousin, and I was watching it with him, and he was looking at the specs of it and everything, and he's like, "No, dude, there's no way. Like, look at all these games the Switch can run. The Switch can run Cyberpunk. If the Switch can run Cyberpunk, it can run GTA 6." I'm like, oh, hmm. And
Unlikely.
look,
Watered down version, maybe.
dude. And I was like, look, I'm bouncing all over the place. Sorry. So that brings me to my next point of the specs. So so the games, I feel like, yes, so a lot of them were re-releases, but a lot of them were also re-announcements, like new announcements, like Enter the Gungeon 2, obviously the Dusk Bloods game that a lot of people were hyped for until they found out what it was, and then it quickly deflated everybody's hype. That was interesting to see. And then that was the From Software game directed by Hidetaka Miyazaki, the Dusk Bloods. And then you have a game which I'm not going to mention names. All I'm going to say is they called me a madman when I said we'll see news about this game, and we saw news about this game, which is Hollow Knight Silksong. I'm just saying they called me a madman. That's all I'm saying.
Who's they
And
though?
I'm not mentioning names. They know themselves. Just saying.
Right.
But anyway, that's not the point.
Yeah.
The point is a lot of these games, and I think the games that really, showed people, like, made people happy, is the games like that are Nintendo specific. So the new Zelda Hyrule Warriors game coming out, obviously the new Donkey Kong game coming out, and then the Kirby game coming out, and a bunch of all these other games that are showing up. Those games, I think those are, and the Dust Bloods game to an extent. I think that is what people are, really excited for more than the re-releases. But I think the re-releases show, as I said, if it makes sense, if I'm making sense, guys, like the re-releases show that the Switch is now a quote unquote capable enough platform. If that makes sense. Like, yes, it's still behind in times in terms of its specs, but for a handheld console, it's trying to do the best it can, which leads me to its specs. They've pretty much buffed everything up. They heard criticisms, and I was watching it, and I was like, they pretty much, answered pretty much every criticism. People said the memory size was too small with 32 gigs. They're like, okay, fine. Here is 256 gigs. They said the screen is too small. They increased the screen. They said the Joy-Cons were too small. They increased the Joy-Cons. And they said the buttons were too small. They increased the size of the buttons. And, they also increased the size of, like the micro SSD slots sizes. The battery is better. The charging time is better. All of that stuff. And as Tammy was pointing out to us, things like they've really added new features like video chat while you're playing games. There's a camera feature. You can have an external camera. So I could be playing, we could be playing our own games, and you can see, like, we could all be playing, like, for example, I don't know, let's say Dust Bloods. We could be playing that game together, and we could be seeing where each person, even though we're playing it together, like, you can still be watching people's different perspectives of the game. And you can also watch, for example, you can stream different games. So I could be playing Zelda, Maxwell, you could be playing Mario, Tommy could be playing Elden Ring, and I could be watching. I'm watching on my screen, so my big screen on top of the big screen is my gameplay, but at the bottom I can see you playing Mario and Tommy playing Elden Ring. So and my cousin's like, "What's the point of that?" And I'm like, "No, it's kind of interesting. It's one of those things where it's like, hey guys, look what I'm doing in my game." And so instead of now taking out your phone to record or whatever, you can just, you know, switch on the video chat or whatever it is, and you can see what your friends are playing. They're trying to do these features that I think other video game consoles don't have. I could be wrong. I don't think.
Facts.
See,
Yeah, I don't think Sony or Microsoft have done that. Tammy mentioned a point. Tammy was like, uh, those other people could never, because even what's it called? Microsoft is still crying about the Connect.
Literally, dog.
Fun times with that Connect.
then here I agree with your cousin. Like, I think as a gimmick, it's nice because I'm trying to put in my head of if my friends are playing a different game to what I'm playing, it's nice to know for like 2 minutes, like, oh, okay, this is what you're doing. But in my 1 hour or 2 hour session of playing a game, it's like I don't give a flying fuck what you're doing unless it relates to what I'm doing. Like if we're all playing like Mario Kart and we're seeing each other's screen, then I'm like, it's cool. This is what's going on in your screen while I'm doing my thing, or we're playing or Zelda or whatever. But then if you're playing a totally different game, it's like it distracts from what I'm doing. Of like, okay, cool. I see what you're doing. So that's why I mean, for like 2 minutes, it's cool. But outside of a quick flash or a quick update of what you're doing, I don't see the point.
No, I hear you. And you're not the only one who feels that way. A lot of people also do feel like it's a cool gimmick, but it's one of those things where Nintendo is trying to trying to make like the Nintendo consoles ever since especially the Wii have been communal consoles. Does that make sense? What I'm trying to say, like they've been consoles like for because yes, you have your couch co-op games on your PlayStation and your Microsoft, but like the Switch is more about the people, like not the Switch, Nintendo console. So like you have the Wii where you can have, you can engage with the console in different ways. Like you can have Wii Sports and you can all play differently. And the Switch is also the same way with the Joy-Cons, how you can play, Switch games. Obviously, you can play your games
It's
individually, but
it's funny.
Mhm.
It's funny you say that because when I think about it, yes, Nintendo's marketing works in that direction. But in application, that's not the reality of it because the Switch is a very individualistic hybrid console. Like in family, in homes and stuff like that, you've got like 3 or 4 different Switches because each family member has their own Switch. It's not a thing of, oh, we have one Switch and then everyone can play the same game. It's like, no, we have multiple games and everyone needs their own Switch. And then also it's like people travel around. Like the Switch is a personal device. It's marketed as a family orientated thing or communal orientated thing, but it's actually very personal. It's hard to share that device.
You see, and that,
In,
yeah, continue.
I was just going to say in real world application, because I did briefly see somebody or some people on Twitter talking about, well, Nintendo's trying to address that where now they're letting people play games within a household. It's not anymore you need to buy multiple Switches or multiple games. But then I'm like, okay, but then that shows there was a problem initially.
Yeah, I can see that. It's they are doing that whole family sharing thing, which I think is a cool thing. That wasn't in the Switch 2 Direct, that was in the previous Direct, I think. But so that's also a Switch 1 feature. But um yeah, it's you're right. It does. I've seen that as well. Like it is marketed in that communal way, especially the Switch One, where I remember that reveal video where people went, someone took the Switch to a party or to a gathering and they were all playing around it together. But Max is right. People do have their different Switches in the same household, but it's one of those things where, yes, it is personally oriented, but I can take my Switch on a plane and play it with the person next to me, but I can't do that with my PlayStation 5 or Xbox. Does that make sense?
Not even your
Yeah,
PSP, though.
I
It's
guess.
trash.
Yeah, so basically, to answer Max's question, I think people are. I think this. Like, when I watched it, after I watched it, I was also writing. I'm not really I haven't owned a Nintendo console since the Wii. I haven't played the Switch in maybe close to half a decade. Um, but I was like, yo, this is actually cool. They're doing things like I said, they're improving on the Switch, which is what you want to do when you're making a new console, a new iteration of something. You improve on it, and that's what they're doing. So it's like, good on them. And look at the games that they're listing and all of that stuff. And then we're gonna get into the aftermath. That's what deflated everything. Max will get onto that. He will lead us into that direction. But I think that, yeah, there was a little bit of overhype in terms of like the type of games. There were some new games, like I said. There were some exclusives, and there were some things that people were genuinely looking forward to. Some announcements that people were really hyped for. But I think people were hyped. There were a lot of games. Like, people, they're just throwing games at you, which is what I wanted to see. But it just confirmed that, hey, look, we are now on the level of these consoles. At least we're trying to be. Although there are, like I said, we'll see how Borderlands 4 runs on the Switch, and we'll see how Project 007 runs on the Switch as compared to the other consoles. So let's use Borderlands 4 as a testing game. Let's see how it runs in comparison to its contemporaries, and then we can judge if it's good enough. Does that make sense? I say let's use that game. Because
I would rather use Cyberpunk, and the reason why I would rather use Cyberpunk is because we've seen how it runs on the PS4. We've seen what adaptations are needed for the current gen, and then also with Cyberpunk, because one of the things we have to not forget about is what is it called when you try to adjust a game for a system?
modify it.
Not modify,
Emulate.
but like Sorry.
Emulate.
No, not emulate.
No?
No, not emulate, but like compatibility issues where, like sometimes, like how people love comparing Xbox and PlayStation. Like, oh, if you want the best experience, just buy it on PlayStation or buy it on Xbox. It's running better on Xbox. These frames are slightly better on Xbox. Like, sometimes certain games are easier to adapt to certain platforms and harder for other platforms. So I feel like with new games, like, remember with Mortal Kombat, how much of a shit show that looked like on the Switch, where figuring out how to work the platform is also key. So I feel like with Cyberpunk, where it's been on the other platforms, where they've had time to adjust for the other platform, there isn't so much of a rush to adjust for the Switch 2, where they're not focusing on any other platform with Cyberpunk. They're solely focusing on making it work to the best of its ability on Switch 2. Whereas these other upcoming games, which are not out yet, they might be thinking, oh, Switch 2, do we even have an audience for this thing? PlayStation and Xbox are a bigger priority. Like, again, Mortal Kombat, you could clearly see the Switch was not a priority. It was just like, let's just get this thing on the Switch. And a lot of companies have done that with the Switch of, let's just get it on the Switch. It's not a priority. If we make sales from this, great. But we know the chunk of our sales are going to come from this. So with new games, which haven't gone out on other platforms, I feel like you may have that issue of the Switch is not a priority, the Switch is secondary. But a game which has made its sales, which has been around for long enough, and they're now moving on to the Switch, it could be a thing of, okay, we don't need to focus or worry about any other games. The Switch is a venture we want to focus on. Let's sort this out and let's ship this in the best format that we can. Yes. So with that said, Kojo, you mentioned about features, and I want to tie into the features. But before we get into talking about the features or touching upon the features, Tommy, I want to check with you about your opinion. Like I said, I didn't watch the direct. Kojo watched the direct live. And Tommy, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe you checked out the direct after the fact. I don't know if you checked
Yeah, I
out the
watched the whole
direct
thing
or if you just
after.
checked out the game.
No,
Ah,
completely after
okay.
I watched it. Yeah.
And what was your impression? Were you also on the tip of this is amazing, this was pretty good, or were you like, ah,
Sorry. For me, okay, so my first impression at the very start was, okay, I'm probably gonna just hear about Mario, the usual Super Mario, all this and this. Mario Kart World, however, wait, let's talk about the Switch though. I'll get into the games later. Talking about the Switch, first of all, this was a huge piss contest with PSP. First of all, let's just get that right out there. Now, I'm kind of liking how the Switch 2 is in terms of all of its features that Kojo also mentioned. Were you saying that, like, some people would also want to see how it performs while with certain games, this and this? My benchmark, other than Borderlands, which is a good one, but my other benchmark is the fact that they're going to be releasing Elden Ring as well. Now that I want to see how it's going to run. But yeah, with the amount of games that it's bringing out and how they tie very nicely with all the features, is especially with how so many of the games now have like free roam type of shandies going on. So I was just like, how is it that we have like the types of like Mario Kart World and we don't even have GTA 6 yet, bruh? You see, that was my whole entire thinking. And then even with like the games that it promises to bring out with its performance, the performances thereof, like, granted, the Switch to me personally hasn't been the type to I'm gonna say compete well with the other two Titan consoles, but this is its like first step, I suppose, to getting to that challenge. I'm still gonna wait to see if anyone's Switch overheats or something. I don't know. But again, even with the prices, I know it's something I'm not gonna own for a very long time. So yeah, other than that, man, the direct was dope, bro. It was actually sick. I like what they're doing, even though I can never afford them. So yeah.
all right. And now that you've also touched upon it about features, we might as well move into that. I was going to touch upon features later, but it ties neatly into what we're talking about now. So with the features, you guys have talked about how Nintendo has improved on everything. Funnily enough, though, my assumption would have been like they've improved on everything as well. But funnily enough, I've seen people online complaining about certain features, about how they feel like this is a step back, or wow, Nintendo, you still can't improve upon this. So first of all, it's the user interface. A lot of people are like, bruh, the same exact UI from the Switch is being used here. And I feel this is kind of nitpicky talking about user interface, but at the same time, I can also get where they're coming from, where how many years has the Switch been around and you can't even upgrade the user interface. If I look at PlayStation, like one of the fun things about always going to a new PlayStation is seeing a different user interface. That's always a nice little touch. So some people might be like, it's not that important. And yes, it really isn't that important, but it's a quality of life type of thing. It's like showing you that you've upgraded, you've moved on to something else. You're not on the same platform. It's those little things. So that's one area, user interface. Then another area is the screen. How Nintendo had OLED with the improved Switch version, and now Switch 2, they've gone back to LCD, where it's like, what the fuck is that? Honestly, what the fuck is that? PSP had LED, and you're telling me Nintendo's too stingy ass to give us LED. Did I say ELD?
No, you said LED.
Can I
You
jump
said,
in?
yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Just
of
'cause
course.
I hate to do this, but you actually bring up a good point, Maxwell. But you remember the Switch OLED when it came out. I think the only difference was the OLED screen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it costs more than a normal Switch,
Yes,
right?
but then now, so what you're saying? This is to keep costs down.
I'm not saying it's to keep costs down. I'm saying it's, well, yeah, but what I'm trying to say is if they included an OLED, I'm sure the console would have gone higher than $450, which people are already complaining
Possibly,
about
but then
now.
it brings to the question of why then could a PSP have an LED screen and the PSP could be very affordable and reasonable, but now all of a sudden, how many years down the road and OLED is too expensive for us to give? We have to give you LCD. I don't even think TV screens use LCD anymore, if I'm not mistaken.
Tariffs, tariffs, tariffs. Just saying.
Yes, I was going to get into the tariffs later, but I suppose now that can neatly tie into the tariffs. But then sticking on to the features where it just feels like, yes, they have improved on some things, but they've also cheaped out on others. And then also another area where they've cheaped out on is with this DRM-like feature of theirs where they are controlling what games can be played. And I should put it out there that there seems to be arguments of what exactly the DRM feature is. So apparently there are certain games where if you buy, you don't have access to the game. You still have you have to download the game. It's like the cartridge you purchase does not have the game on it. You
Yep.
insert the cartridge for the Switch to be able to recognize that, okay, this is the game, and then you download the game online.
Yep.
There's arguments being made that this is only for online games, that legacy games which are being brought onto the Switch will have this feature, but typical games or Switch 2 games, Switch 2 ready games are not going to have this feature. But I'm going to put an asterisk on that and say we haven't seen the Switch yet. So let's wait and see what comes out of this, because I feel like this is something a lot of people have jumped on, where the Switch, the Nintendo haters have jumped onto this saying, look at how terrible Nintendo are, and the Nintendo excuse makers or the Nintendo glazers, meat riders, glizzy glazers are saying, no, it's only for online. For me, it doesn't make sense that it would only be for online, because why not just have the game available online? Why do you need to make a cartridge for an online game? That's sus. So I'm not listening to either side. I'm waiting to see what the reality is going to be before I make a judgment on that. But I'm bringing it up now so that people are aware that there is division on this topic about this feature. Because the thing which pisses me off about Nintendo, and I mentioned this to Kojo before, is that Nintendo is the only company between Sony and Microsoft who make profit on their console. The PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One, I believe it was the Xbox One, was the first and only time the rival companies have ever made profit on their companies. And what I mean by profit, to clarify for the people who might be confused, is typically, on average, consoles are manufactured at a loss. Every console that is sold is a loss for the manufacturer, for Sony, Microsoft. They don't make money on consoles that are bought. They make money off of the games on those consoles. But the PS4 and the Xbox One was the first time Sony and Microsoft said, let's make profit off of our console. And that's why that generation was so good for them. Okay, I don't know about Xbox, but for Sony, it was so good because every console sold, they were making a profit off of that actual console instead of typically making a lead loss. And a lead loss is basically, we're going to make a loss on this, but in making a loss, we'll be profiting from software and other features available for this thing. Nintendo doesn't do that. Nintendo manufactures at a profit. All of the consoles they release are made at a profit, except for maybe, and this I would have to double check, maybe the GameCube is the only console Nintendo may have made which was made at a loss. And apparently, because the GameCube didn't sell as well as they would have liked, they reverted back to basic of saying, nah, we'll make profit at all of our consoles. So, with that said, with the Switch being sold at $450 and a lot of people being saying the price is not that great, it also means that it doesn't cost Nintendo that much to make this console and they're overcharging us. And again, based on what Kojo said, we could look back and say it's tariffs. and it's a very strong possibility that it might be tariffs. And
Hmm.
I want to hear if you guys have any opinions or takes on these features of the Nintendo, which seemingly are not being improved upon. Should they be improved upon? Can they be improved upon? Or is it okay how things are going right now? That the other things that Nintendo have improved upon is good enough for the time being?
I don't know. It's a good question. Because I think for me,
Because
I've always, yeah.
now, I was just going to say, you guys don't feel that you must have an opinion on everything that is being said. You could be like, nah, I don't have an opinion on it, and we can move to the next topic. So it's all good. Like, just say what you feel you want to say on the
Yeah, no,
matter.
I'm just trying to say, like, in terms of just going back to what you said about how they're repeating shit. I understand why people would be pissed off about that, right? My argument is to say that Sony has had a very similar-ish theme for a while, and now people only get pissed off at Nintendo for doing it. And I'm like, nah, but it's not really a good argument, to be honest, for those people. But yeah, I mean, I can somewhat understand, like, them saying it should always get repeated. It's the same way that I was even saying when I first started watching the direct, I thought it was just going to be the usual shit that gets shown, but I was actually pretty flipping amazed. So for me, it's a W for Nintendo. I know, granted, whatever, any hate or whatever towards them, but nah, W's, bro. I mean, to
Like
me, they just
W
don't
in
miss.
relation to
In relation to amazing me, bro. I'm not an easy nigga to,
no,
amaze.
like what is a W?
For me, the W is
You,
not just the innovation, but finally hopping on board with open world games, especially for
ah,
Mario Kart. I think that's one of the first that Mario Kart has ever had. I think it's the only Mario Kart that has open world.
wait. On that regard, let me clarify that. I feel when it comes to game innovation, Nintendo's probably number one in that area. Nobody holds a candle to that in the gaming sphere. But outside of gaming, like looking at how the console are made, the features of a console and stuff like that, that's where I feel like a lot of people are upset about. Not necessarily the games. The games I think is fine, but it's like
I'm
the
upset.
features that are coming with the console, with the hybrid console.
Yeah, I'm upset that it's come this late. And the reason why I said that at first when I saw, I was like, oh, okay, the whole chat feature just seems like Discord, which both consoles like PS and Xbox now have. Granted, not to that extent. But the thing I'm also just worried about is it kind of almost felt like I was watching an Apple Note where the changes were not too big, not too small. But at the same time, it's just like, okay, I don't know if they're shooting too high, because how can something that small manage these games that they mentioned? And they most certainly should not hype us up for something that most people will complain about. Same reason when like the first batch of PS5s came out, the noises they made, people not happy about that. So we'll see. I don't know. Kojo?
Yeah, actually, I don't have much to add on this one. I think maybe they're gearing up later down the line to release a Nintendo Switch 2 OLED edition. Who knows? But that'll be actually,
I very well could see that.
if that happens, that would be hilarious, and people will still buy it. But
Yes.
yeah, I think yeah, we can move on to the next topic.
All right. So the next thing I want to talk about, it ties together, where it's the tariffs in conjunction with the price of the game and the console. So the console is going to be retailing at $450, and there are going to be two versions: a Japanese version and an international version. The international version is somewhere around $450 US buckaroos, and the Japanese version is somewhere around $330, where local Japanese people, and if you can speak Japanese or read Japanese, rather read, not speak, you can also buy it at that price. But the trade-off for the lower price is the console is region locked. And for those who don't understand what region locked basically means, it's that if you buy your Switch to be Japanese, you can only buy from the Japanese market, which means all your games will be in Japanese and all of that stuff, and you cannot enjoy international deals or specials or stuff like that. So if you are happy to be in that Japanese ecosystem, go for it. But if you're not, then you unfortunately have to stick to the multilingual international one, because that's also a thing. It's not a thing of, oh, let me buy Japanese, I'll change the language. No, you can't change the language as far as I'm aware, because they highlighted it as being Japanese language versus multilingual language. So there's that factor. The console is going to be going for $450, and a lot of people are not pleased about that. I'm also not pleased about that, because I'm looking at it at, it's selling $450. The PlayStation several years ago was $400, and the Switch 2 is around the PS4 level of power, but you're selling it for $450. And I feel like the PS4, you could do a lot more with it in terms of game features. Then the part which has kicked most people in the teeth. So already, there's some people who are iffy about the console price at $450. Then the part which everybody is upset about is how it is games are going to be selling for $80 and $90. Basically, digital games are going to be selling for $80, and that doesn't make any fucking sense, however you want to slice it. Whereas physicals are going to be hitting 90. But I should also put an asterisk to the physicals being 90, where it seems it's going to be anywhere between $60 to $90 depending on the game. Third-party publishers seem to be selling games for $70, and some lower, smaller games like $50, but that's still crazy to me, $50 for a smaller game. And Nintendo themselves seem to be selling from anywhere from 70 to 90, depending on what the title is. So it's not going to be across the board, all the games are going to be $90 going forward. But it does put a dangerous precedence in terms of game price, because now we got things like GTA, where it's like, okay, Nintendo has dipped their toes first. Now GTA can come in and be like, okay, yes, we are making our thing for $100, and it's hard to argue against something like GTA being $100 because of how expansive the game is. Whereas Nintendo games being $90, like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, there was a graph which was showing that on average, PlayStation games cost $200 million to make. Nintendo games cost $50 million to make, but Nintendo is selling their games for a higher price than PlayStation games. Make it make sense. And Nintendo apologists are going to be like, no, but the quality is like, no. Still, it costs less to make these games, and they're charging more. You cannot justify that. And that's where I want to put the platform to you guys on how do you feel about these Nintendo prices. And we get into now the area where people are getting upset about Nintendo greed. I think I would like to touch upon the fact that Nintendo has been greedy for the longest time. Unlike other console manufacturers, like when the game has been out for quite a while, it was retailing at $70, and after a couple of years, it will fall down to $50 or $40 or something along those lines. Nintendo first-party games do not drop in price. On year 1, if it's selling for 70, year 10 is still going to be selling for 70. With that said, just in general, with Nintendo and their greed is, Nintendo is very unapologetic with how greedy they are, and it goes back to what I was saying about different standards are put in for PlayStation and for Xbox, where when Xbox and PlayStation do something, people are crying bloody murder. But when Nintendo's doing something, like, no, but people start making excuses for Nintendo. The same way people make excuses for Apple, people make excuses for Nintendo. And with this excuse thing, I would just like to point out, for objectivity's sake, PlayStation is also beginning to enter that realm of excuses. In the past, people would go scream bloody murder for PlayStation. Now, people are giving excuses for PlayStation. Case in point was the PS5 Pro, where people were trying to justify that. Where I was like, no, fuck you. that price is not justified. And Nintendo, for me, for the longest time, the prices they put out had never been justified. Another area of showing the Nintendo hypocrisy is with PlayStation putting PS5 upgrades from PS4. They were like, oh, if you pre-own this game and you want to upgrade, it's going to cost you $10. In some cases, it was a free upgrade, but for the most part, it was $10 to upgrade to the new game. Nintendo, it's fuck you. You have to dish out a whole new $70 for this upgrade. Where it's like, what the fuck is this? And people are trying to justify that. And that's why I'm like, nah, dog, there's a different rule for Nintendo. And if it ever has been more blatant, it's now. Where you can clearly see that everyone else, there's these set of rules. Nintendo has this set of rules. And I'll re-emphasize that PlayStation is slowly beginning to enter that Nintendo sphere of people are making excuses. People are twerking for PlayStation. And I don't think in gaming in general, it's ever a good thing for people making excuses for developers. They're not your friend. They don't owe you anything. They don't care about you. They look at you as dollar signs, as money. So don't be out there twerking for these companies, being their publicists and trying to make excuses for them. What do you guys think?
Twerking is wild, dog. But I agree. Yeah, I remember we spoke about this in an episode before where it's like people just people just excuse, or look past the shit that Nintendo goes through and justify like, no, it's their game, they can do whatever they want. And but it's like, okay, but no, why must so I get what you're saying. I think for me, the thing I just don't like about Nintendo, and you mentioned it, is how everything is so expensive. Not even just the console, but even the games themselves. And that's partially why I just can't play Nintendo games. I really want to, don't get me wrong. But it's like, the moment I do, let's say, I get to the point where I do have enough cash for it, I'm just like, is it justifiable enough to be parting with all this cash, knowing damn well, I could end up not liking this stuff, And
I would like to touch upon that. I'm not a fan of the type of games Nintendo makes. I think Nintendo makes kiddie games and I'm not interested in that. But with said, I do experiment with games. I'm willing to go out there and be like, this game doesn't look interesting, or this game's not for me, but I'm willing to give it a try. But at a $90, I'm like, fuck you. I'm not even going to touch that with a 10-foot pole. And also, it's like the Xbox and PlayStation have these robust games where I'm like, okay, I know this is a $60, $70 experience. It might not be for me, but I know this is a $60/$70 experience. Nintendo, I don't feel that way. Nintendo games, I feel like those are $40 experiences masquerading as $70 experiences. Where once in a while, once in a blue moon, they do have a $70 game, like Mario Odyssey or Zelda Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom. Those are $70 games. Those are full, robust games. But 60% of their library or 80% of their library are not $70 games, but you're paying that type of price. So I'm like, nah, I'm not willing to part with that for a game I know I'm not getting this level of quality. Like, yes, it's fun and innovative, but they're indie games which are fun and innovative. Kojo mentioned Enter the Gungeon 2 is coming out. I'm excited for that game, but I would not pay $70 for Enter the Gungeon. Yet Nintendo will make Enter the Gungeon type games, which are very incredibly fun, but price them at $70. Fuck you.
Tell him, bro.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, look, I can barely afford $60 games as it is. Actually, no, I can't afford $60 games right now. Not even barely. I can't afford $60 games. All I play are free-to-play games these days.
That's true.
So, imagine asking me to pay $80 or $90 for a game. Like, again, don't get me wrong. The Mario Kart World looks awesome. I like Mario Kart. Mario Kart is a very fun party game. It really is. But $80 digital, $90 for that. Yeah. Someone at Nintendo is on premium level crack.
Oh, smoking that pack.
But yeah, no, I like, look, I try to, see both sides of the argument, but I don't see a defense for $80 games. And as Maxwell mentioned, this sets a bad precedent for the rest of the industry. Because everybody's looking at this like, oh, word? Alright, cool. Our next game is going to be $90 as well. The next, I don't know. Watch FIFA start selling their game. EA starts selling FIFA for $80 now.
Bruh. Because this is potentially an Xbox Live moment where it's like everybody just chugs on and gets on with it. Like, oh, we could be doing this all this time? Bet. Let's start.
Yeah. It's scary, man. It's a scary flashpoint period for the gaming industry. Like, look, we get it. Games have been $60 for a long time. I think even in the NES era, if you adjust cost, games were $60 or even more expensive now. I mean, it's more expensive then if you adjust for inflation and things like that.
Yeah,
but games have been $60 for a while.
Inflation. With inflation, games back then were costing somewhere around $125.
Yeah, exactly. So they've been $60 for a while. And I understand that with the ballooning budget of, game budgets. It's not just in the game industry, in the movie industry as well. Like, budgets are crazy ridiculous. Like, especially like in the AAA blockbuster side for games and movies, but let's focus on games. In the AAA, like, people are saying, a lot of people, Sean Layden, the former PlayStation head, and Shuhei, they've all come out and said, the AAA industry is in a very precarious state because they're unsustainable, the budgets that the games are asking for these days, because that means that they're selling these games at a loss, because those games costing $60 is not going to make them get their money back. So they have to increase the price, and then obviously gamers are not going to pay. There's certain games that people will pay. Like, I'm pretty sure people pay $100 for GTA 6. No, I'm pretty sure. I am sure. But
I might, yeah.
Yeah, like, it sets a bad precedent for, like she said, Maxwell. It's not good for anybody, especially the consumer. And it's one of those things where it's like, you're charging me $60. Oh no, not $60. You're charging me $80 for a game. Cool. I'll just go play an older one, or I'll just go play a free one, and then you can have fun with your $80, $90 game. And then nobody buys that $90, $80 game. The studio gets shut down or whatever, blah blah blah, because they don't have make money, and then the industry just falls apart. So yeah, I think it's bad. Yeah, $80, $90. I think it's atrocious. Yeah, that's my point. That's my viewpoint.
And to add to that, you could also get people saying, nah, I'm just going to pirate this game.
Oh, I forgot about the One Piece lifestyle. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, but then also with that, they were mentioning about games, and before we enter the tariffs conversation of games and console price, there was a Kotaku article, and I hate referencing Kotaku, but there was a Kotaku article where it was saying roughly 1,000 Nintendo Switch 1 games are going to have compatibility issues with Switch 2 because of how the DRM area of the Switch 2 of Nintendo trying to control what people can and cannot do with the Switch 2. Where it's like, hey, you remember when people were crying about the PlayStation 5 not having legacy or not having enough games? Well, the Switch 2 is going to come out with barely any games. Let's see how people are going to try and defend that. And again, it goes back to the thing of there's one rule for everyone else and a whole set of other rules for Nintendo, which is absolutely bullshit. But that was just touching upon. People should look into that for themselves. Then the tariffs area. This is the interesting area. There's a lot of arguments about The reason why the things are so highly priced is because of Trump's tariffs coming in, where I think everybody and their uncle, if you live in a cave by now, you probably heard about the tariffs, where there've been many memes and jokes about the different tariff percentages, which countries are getting tariffs and all of this stuff. So the word was Nintendo moved their manufacturing from, it was either China or Taiwan to, I believe, Vietnam or Cambodia, one of those two countries. I believe it was Vietnam, to try and avoid the tariffs. That was the whole movement, and prices went up because to compensate for the tariffs coming in. But then after the whole switch thing, Trump also had, on April 2nd was also the day Trump was giving his announcement of the tariffs. And it turns out that the tariffs are not just on specific countries. It's a global tariff where every single country in the world are feeling tariffs, where the base tariff is 10%, and then certain specific countries are getting 32%, 46%, 50 whatever percent, or 17%, whatever. It varies from country to country, but every country is being hit with a base of 10%. So Nintendo, trying to be smart, apparently they weren't that smart, because the new country they chose to manufacture from or get their resources from are also being hit with tariffs. So it's being thought that on the one hand, Nintendo increased their prices to compensate for tariffs, but on the other hand, they're still going to make losses with the tariffs. So in this area, I guess it's better to be PlayStation and Xbox, who came out with their console in advance. And it makes me wonder, do you guys think these tariffs are going to affect Nintendo in any way? Like, A, in terms of the profit they're going to be making when the console releases in June, and B, do you guys think there's going to be any potential price cuts or from Nintendo's side, like that are looking at it like down the line, they'll be like, okay, we need to slice the price down to attract customers, or okay, because of these tariffs, we need to increase the price. Like, how do you guys feel these tariffs are going to affect the console and the games, if at all they will have any effects? What kind of effects do you think they will have, if they will have effects?
Tommy, I'll let you
And
go
here,
first,
let's.
but
Okay.
Mike, so the country is Cambodia, not Vietnam.
Okay.
For me, the only thing I think will definitely affect it, because games, they're digital, so I don't think there'll be too much change of that. But definitely, if you're ordering the game from anywhere outside of your home country, if it's coming from the States, obviously don't order from there. Try to order from Japan or Australia if you possibly can. Either way, then you won't spend too much on the duties to get it through customs, but yeah, I think that's the only way I think it'll affect quite a lot. Kojo?
Yeah, I think the tariffs will play some role into all of this. Especially the hardware, on the hardware front. I think it will. I'm yet to. I mean, Trump has, as of the time of recording this discussion, has just put up revealed the tariff, lists and the amounts of each country is getting. So we're still yet to. Well, I personally, but I think we're all still yet to fully feel the effects of that. I think we'll feel it in the coming weeks and months. So in terms of gaming, I think it might just get worse, but we just have to see.
Yeah, I'm hoping out it's a situation where we just have to ride this out for a few months, and then Trump is going to be pressured to reverse his decision, because the rest of the world are like, nah, fuck you collectively. And they're like, okay, we're just not going to engage with you guys. We'll make deals elsewhere. And then America's now feeling isolated. And then Trump is getting pressured from the politicians around him to reverse his tariffs. I think that would probably take a few months for them to realize how bad of a decision it was. I'm just hoping it's not going to affect the prices of consoles which are already available. Like I was planning on getting a PlayStation 5 this year, and now I'm like, so does this mean I have to pay more for the PlayStation 5? Because I don't want to buy a PS5 from Japan. I would rather get it from outside of a country and bring it in. Part of the reason is the settings, the default settings, like, with Japan, a circle and X, different settings. I don't want it to be in Japanese. Yes, I can change the language, but then also there's the cable, the power source, and all of that different stuff where I'm not going to be living in Japan forever. When I move, I'm going to go to a country which has European style power source. So I'd rather order my PlayStation from abroad, from Europe, and get that type of power source, as opposed from getting it from Japan, where only Japan and America use that type of 110 voltages. Like I need 240. So I'm now wondering, is this tariff going to affect my other side of gaming? So to close off this conversation, I would like us to consider the division this has made. So as I previously said that for the most part, people are Nintendo apologists. They let Nintendo get away with murder. And PlayStation is slowly entering that upper echelon sphere. And it's called like an Apple sphere, where regardless of what Apple does, people will always buy Apple products. Nintendo has been in that sphere for the longest time. PlayStation is now recently beginning to enter it. It depends on the gaming front. As long as they continue doing well, making games, people are going to make excuses for them, because I've been seeing it online on Twitter where people are like, yeah, but The Last of Us was such a good game, I'm willing to let them cook. Or the Ghost of Tsushima is so good, I'm willing to let them cook. It's not anymore a thing of this company has a good reputation, let's see what comes out of it. It's like, nah, I like this game, the next game is going to be a certified banger. It's like now all of a sudden games are certified bangers and you haven't even played it yet. It's like, no, there's no such thing as a certified banger. There's, hey, making good games from the past generates you goodwill, but we're now getting to a ridiculous phase where it's just like, oh, people are assuming, like Naughty Dog's next game, people are assuming it's going to be a banger, where it's just like, bruh, we haven't even seen gameplay of this thing, and it's them doing something completely different. We have no idea what's going to be happening here. If it was a Last of Us sequel, I could see people getting excited, because it's like there's the skeleton to The Last of Us, and you like that skeleton, so they can't go too far away from the skeleton. So you're excited to see how they reinvent or how they improve the skeleton. But when it's a completely new game, you have no flipping clue what they're going to do. You cannot call it a certified bang. Like, people being excited of Ghost of Yotai, I can understand, because you've played Tsushima and you have an idea of how it should play. So they are developing off of that. But then it's like that Galactic whatever from Naughty Dog, the Wolverine game from Insomniac, what other games are in development by Sony, a thing. People, you don't have a right to say it's going to be a banger. You can get excited. But anyway, that's me getting off track. Going back on track with a whole division thing. I've seen people now starting to turn on Nintendo saying, yeah, but Nintendo really isn't all that. And I'm happy to see the division. I'm very happy, because I've been saying all of these things for the longest time. Like, if you want to see a Nintendo hater, you don't need to look far. Look at me. But I would like to think I'm a reasonable Nintendo hater. I'm not just dunking on them for whatever reason. I look at the situation and I give reasons for why they should be dunked. And how about you guys? Have you guys seen division being sowed amongst people? And if so, what kind of division have you been seeing? And where do you feel about everything? Do you feel that this division is justified? Are you also feeling some type of way, or you have no stake in this race? Wada wada wada. And we'll start with Kojo, because you love nominating Tommy.
I think I think I fall in the latter category of I have no stakes. Like, me, I try to stay away from social media as much as I can, so I haven't really been seeing much of the Nintendo itself. I've only seen specifics like the whole Dusk Blood people's reaction to Dusk Bloods. But in terms of as a whole, I only know from what I hear through the grapevine from like you guys about how, or from YouTube videos about how the showcase was amazing, and right after the showcase, they reviewed the prices and everything just went downhill from there. So I haven't really seen. I can imagine that obviously there will be a division. Obviously there will always be a civil war. You know, of one side versus the other. You have your, as Maxwell says, your Nintendo defenders, and then you have your Nintendo deriders, or whatever. But in terms of this, I don't have a stay. I haven't, again, like I said, I haven't had a Nintendo console since Wii. And it's. I don't think I'll be getting this console anytime soon, if ever. Unless,
if ever.
unless someone buys it for me for my birthday. Hint, hint. Um, But yeah, I don't have like Maxwell you said, I don't have a horse in this race, me personally.
Right, right. And tell me where you stand.
I'm broke, bro. Hella broke. Yeah, same as Koja. I don't think I'll ever. Okay, I don't want to say ever. God damn. I don't know if I'll be able to afford a Switch. I've always wanted one for Super Mario Maker 2. But yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. And yeah, man. With regards to all the changes they're gonna make, look, at the end of the day, they're still gonna have fans. I think that's just something we all have to just accept. Like, they're still gonna have fans. They're still gonna have the apologists, as Max calls them. So I mean, there's not much we can do. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
So in closing, let me ask you guys this question, because I'd really quickly like to point out that, like Coach just said, people were loving the showcase. Then the prices came out. Then people quickly, the attitude and the mood quickly changed. But then what I've been seeing online is it's picking back up again, where the apologists have come out and they're making excuses like no, but this, or no, but that, or trying to justify or defend things. So in closing, I would like to ask you guys, do you think Nintendo shat the bed with their prices? Yes or no? Keeping in mind the tariffs, keeping in mind that people are still going to buy. And I guess also with answering, if you think yes or no, did they shat the bed, you can also give a prediction of, do you think the Switch 2 is going to have crazy sales, diminished sales, or is it going to struggle? Because before it was revealed in all of this, analysts were saying the Switch 2 is going to have one of the best sales ever. But one, I don't think analysts even knew anything about the tariffs, and two, I don't think analysts knew what the price was going to be like. So with all the negative press, do you guys think the negative press is going to affect the sales, or no? Nintendo Switch is still going to sell like hotcakes? So I'll start off and give my answer, where one, I do think Nintendo shat the bed with their price and their announcement, and specifically the gaming price. And then with regards to sales, my gut instinct is to say I don't think it's going to sell well. But that was the same impression I received with the PS5 Pro and the PS5. What the hell was that handheld thing called? PS5 Q or some shit? Portal. That's the one. Yeah, I think the code name might have been Q. I don't know where I'm getting Q for. But the Portal, I thought those two were not going to sell that well. Nope. They sold well for Sony despite the stupid price. So this might just be a similar situation with Nintendo. But I'm going to go with my gut instinct and say I think the sales will be diminished. It's still going to sell, but not to the analyst expectations of this is going to be one of the best console releases. I don't think it's going to be amongst the best console releases. I just think it'll have a solid sale for Nintendo.
I don't know. with Nintendo, I mean, there is going to be a Titan in the game. As for whether they'll be the king of the hill, I can't say. I doubt it personally, but yeah, we'll see.
I think if it was just the console price that was, if it was just the 450, I think they could have ridden it out. I
True.
think it would have been, people have been like 450, but okay, fine, whatever. But 450 plus $80, $90, yeah, that's that was too much. That was too much. But I still think it'll do fine. I think it's gonna sell okay. Like Max said, if it does gangbusters, like if it does anywhere close to original Switch numbers, I will be shocked. Well, not I will be shocked, but I will be a little bit amazed. Not shocked, but amazed.
So will I, because there's no impetus to give up your Switch and jump onto the Switch 2 yet.
Yeah, true. So yeah, that's just my thinking.
All right, so that's it from us. Thank you, everybody who chimed in to give a listen, and also feel free to give us your opinion on any of the matters that we may have mentioned. If you stuck around this long enough, you might as well hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, and once again, throw into the comments what you think, where you stand on any of this situation. Do you agree with us or do you disagree with us? Were there any points you think we touched upon which might be interesting or we missed out on? Give us your opinions. Otherwise, thanks for giving this a listen, and we'll catch you next time in our next discussion.